As is usually the tradition when someone starts rabbinical school, I remember at the start of rabbinical school, my classmates and I pored over the sections and laws of Masechet Sukkah. These, I heard, yep. These are the laws pertaining to the building of a sukkah. And we learned laws that perhaps were only interesting to us. For example, what if you build a sukkah on top of a sukkah? Is it kosher? I didn't really hear a lot of definite answers. Well, what we're told is the one on top is kosher. Another question, can you build a sukkah under a tree? No, you may not, because the Mishnah says that's compared to building a house, not a sukkah. Now, what about building a sukkah on top of a ship? Is that valid? Yes, it is. Now, this one. What about a sukkah who wants to use a live elephant for the walls of the sukkah? I hear absolutely. Let's get, just for fun. Do you think yes? Raise your hand. No, raise your hand. Okay, so, I mean, is this like the rabbis had so much time on their hands that this is what they wrote in Masechet Sukkah? So I'm sorry for those who raised their hand yes. The answer is no, because the elephant can just get up and walk away. But there's one piece of Jewish law regarding a sukkah that's bothered me for the last 2 years. The question is, how long may a sukkah remain up? Meaning, the week-long festival is over. How long do you have until you must take it down? So the answer is meaningful and it's practical. You actually have as long as you would like to take down a sukkah, but you can't use the schach. You can't use the rooftop material for your sukkah next year. So if you're busy, you can take your time, but that won't be the exact same kind of sukkah that you'll use the following Sukkot. When I traveled with the Board of Rabbis to Israel in November 2023, upon my return, many of you asked, what stood out when I visited the southern region of Israel, where just weeks prior, Hamas had entered kibbutz after kibbutz, what we know now, committing the most brutal day of murder of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And one image came to me then and continues to haunt me now, and that's the images of the sukkahs. The sukkahs in those kibbutzim that were once filled with joy, once filled with laughter and with food and singing, these celebrating sukkahs. Sukkahs that now stood lonely and grieving, riddled with bullet holes, empty of life sukkahs. Sukkahs to this day that still stand, either waiting for their builders to return or mourning the loss of builders that will never come. But we have to remember that the central lesson of Sukkot is impermanence, that a sukkah is supposed to come down. It's a temporary dwelling, just as the Israelites lived in temporary dwellings throughout the desert. When we eat in a sukkah, when we sleep in a sukkah, we are meant to look back at our sturdy, well-structured homes and remind ourselves that yes, life is fragile, that life can be upended at any point, but ultimately we do return to a sense of stability, a sense of routine, a life infused with structure and gratitude and blessing. But those still standing Sukkot from October 7th, 2023, they turn that lesson on its head. And today we commemorate 2 years of that awful day, as hostages are still in captivity, as peace is not yet a clear reality. These still standing sukkahs ingrained within our beings that uprootedness, uncertainty, fear, and sorrow are more permanent than we realize. Think of the days of Shiva. After the final day, we get up from our mourning and we walk out into the world. And while it certainly does not mean that our pain is less, there is a shift from one state to another, meaning that mourning should not be permanent. Still standing sukkahs should not be a permanent fixture in our eyes or in the souls of the Jewish people. There are too many visuals, too many experiences that have become our permanent poisons. I have an awful joke, truly awful joke to tell you about a little girl in Central Park. She's in Central Park Zoo, and she's playing too close to the rails in the lion's enclosure. Of course, what happens? She falls in. And everyone is screaming, and everyone is worried. And all of a sudden, a man takes a flying leap into the enclosure, jumps into the lion's den, shoves the lion away, manages to save the girl, and jumps back out. Well, another person, it turns out to be a reporter, goes up to the man and says, "Wow, how did you learn how to do that? You are a hero." And the man replies, "Oh, I'm in the IDF. And that's what we are trained to do. We save people from harm." Well, the very next day, what does the front page of the newspaper read? Israeli soldier assaults lion in the Central Park Zoo and steals its lunch. Your reaction was exactly what I wanted. Groans. We groan. But those kinds of damaging headlines, things that shouldn't exist or at the very least feel impermanent, we've grown accustomed to seeing this. But anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, this should never be permanent. Swastikas on sidewalks, shooting in synagogues, rallies that decry our existence. These metaphorical sukkahs are still standing. They have become, in our eyes, permanent, but they must be taken down. We know that there's a ceasefire negotiated on the table right now, and some of us feel shocked that no anti-Zionist persona is urging Hamas to accept this deal, because we've grown acclimated to a world in which this is acceptable. But no, we must not let this kind of environment become permanent in the eyes of our children. This is not the kind of sukkah that our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren should experience and associate with Jewish tradition. It was October 7th, 2024. A reporter from the Jerusalem Post spoke with a religious reservist in the IDF who was having a hard time observing the holiday of Sukkot, because he said when he sees the sukkahs, all he can think about was the contrast of brightly decorated Sukkot standing bereft amid the horrific sights and smells and sounds he and his comrades experienced as they fought to clear out the terrorists out of the kibbutz. And yet, this soldier has 2 preschool-aged children who says do not associate a sukkah with horror and pain, but they still associate it with festivity and fun and celebration and songs and food and family. And this, he says, this is what he wants to perpetuate. This is the permanent memory he wishes will continue from generation to generation. And so while the halakha, the Jewish law, says one may keep up a sukkah for as long as one needs, remember what I said at the start. You can't use that very same rooftop, that Chag, the very next holiday. Meaning for us, that which is temporary may never really become fixed. Impermanence should not be forever. Which means on the second anniversary of October 7th, in which peace feels so very close, in which the hope of our hostages, all of them coming home, may God willing be a reality in the coming days, our collective prayer must be the following. The still standing sukkahs from October 7th, 2023, let them not become permanent fixtures for us, for the Jewish people, for the people of Israel. May we soon take them down and change that Chag so that our children do not see them as permanent symbols of hate and destruction, but rather view the sukkah as it was intended, places where we gather bizman simchatenu, to experience joy and ultimately peace, that even where horror once stood, that too can be transformed into settings of memory and honor and gladness and light. Because if we truly believe that impermanence should not be forever, then we must be the ones to rebuild not only the sukkahs, but also this world, so that sorrow does not settle in as structure, and so that joy, not fear, becomes the shelter that our children inherit. May the sukkahs that we raise tomorrow stand not in the shadow of grief, but rather in the light of healing and hope. Chag Sameach.